Greetings once again. So thank you all for coming, for your interest in hearing from our candidates today. If you're joining us, let me share a few ground rules with you. If you've been here as a frequent flyer through our other forums, I'm sorry for the repetition. Our candidates have agreed to rules for the forum. They are as follows. The candidates have drawn numbers to determine their speaking order. As the moderator, I will rotate this order during the course of the forum. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to make opening remarks before we start with questions. Following their remarks, each candidate will have 1 minute to answer questions posed. Each candidate will have 2 opportunities to request a 30-second rebuttal to make remarks during the forum. As time draws to a close, each candidate will have 1 minute to make closing remarks. League members will act as timekeepers. They're right here in the front row, giving a 30-second and 15-second warning, so candidates, please complete your thoughts before the stop sign is shown. Time limits will be enforced out of respect for all candidates. Questions will be provided from the audience. Each question will be answered by both candidates, so audience, please ask questions that pertain to all. League members have index cards for this forum. They are blue, that are available for you to write your questions on and pass them to the end of the row to be picked up. Questions are being reviewed for clarity, appropriateness, and to avoid duplication. Candidates have been asked not to interrupt one another and to speak directly to the audience. Audience, you have some responsibilities too. First of all, please turn off your cell phones. The forum is being taped by the League of Women Voters for educational purposes, and the candidates have agreed to this. We ask that you hold your applause until the end, and please do not demonstrate in any way to show support for or non-support for a candidate. There is a space outside the forum room where candidates will be available to speak to their supporters following the forum. No campaign signs may be posted or displayed inside the forum room. We ask for your help and respect in abiding by these rules. So in this final forum of the day, we're hearing from candidates for the race for the Illinois 8th Congressional District seat of the U.S. House of Representatives. The district is big, nearly 750,000 residents, including all or parts of Addison, Arlington Heights, Bensonville, Bloomingdale, Carroll Stream, Carpentersville, Elgin, Elk Grove Village, Elmhurst, Glendale Heights, Hanover Park, Hoffman Estates, Itasca, Lombard, Medina, Oak Brook Terrace, Palatine, Roselle, Rolling Meadows, Schaumburg, South Barrington, Streamwood, Villa Park, and Wooddale. With us today and on the ballot are Representative Raja Krishnamoorthi and his challenger, Jitendra Diganvker. The winner of November's election will serve a 2-year term. So thank you both for your participation today. We'll start the forum with your 2-minute opening remarks, and by draw order, we'll start with Mr. Diganvker.
Thank you. Are we ready to go?
Yes, please.
Thank you. It's my honor and privilege to be here. I want to thank the League of Women Voters, Sumberg Library, Daily Herald, and above all,
I encourage you to use the microphone, please.
Okay. It's my honor and privilege to be here today in front of you. I want to thank Sumberg Library, League of Women Voters, and Daily Herald for hosting this such an important, critical event. And this venue is very important. It's part of our district, and you are our constituent. And I will be very honest and fair with you today. My name is Jitendra Diganvker. My friends call me JD. And I'm a lifelong volunteer. My purpose is to serve. My cause is to serve. I came in this country in 1995, followed the legal process, made my wife wait for 5 years, and she has to wait 5 years to make it a call, a family. We came here and we worked hard. As many immigrants, many Americans, American dream is not, it's available for everyone. but it's just not easy. You have to work hard. I have seen the truth and tragedy. And at the process, I have seen that career politicians, they have no objective but to just go back to the ballot again and win again. As you know, many of you know that I have supported my opponent more than 12 years. I was a good friend of him. And all I know about him, when I progress, he is total changed man. He don't care about hardworking American. He don't care about hardworking workers, women, unions, workers. He don't care about small businesses. He says he is, but he's not. You can check his voting record. And all he wants to do when he goes to Congress, he's gonna do the more investigation, and he is gonna go for impeachment. Vote for him is nothing more than voting for Nancy Pelosi and more investigation. And that's a nightmare for hardworking American, and we can't afford that. I am here to serve, and I'm here ready to serve.
Thank you very much. Mr. Krishnamoorthi.
Call me Raja. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for coming today. I think that today's event, conducted by League of Women Voters, Schaumburg Library, and your participation is a testament to the strength of our democracy. I came here as an infant from India. My parents brought me here as legal immigrants, and I don't think that they expected one of their sons to become a member of the U.S. Congress. But then again, they expected that anything is possible in this country. Like many of you, recently I've become very concerned about the partisanship and lack of progress on issues of public importance in Washington, D.C. I believe that I was elected in 2016 to break through this and get something done. To that end, I want to highlight two accomplishments for your consideration. First, working with members of the other side, we passed and got signed into law the first major modernization of our nation's skills-based education system. This is very important because 2/3 of Americans are not going to get a 4-year college degree. But if we wish for them a middle-class lifestyle and a chance at the American dream, we must modernize our skills-based and career and technical education system. So I'm very proud of this bipartisan accomplishment. The second accomplishment I want to highlight for your consideration is I was happy to play a meaningful role in bringing the Illinois Tollway Authority together with Canadian Pacific Railroad to reach an agreement which will finally make possible Western access to O'Hare International Airport. This is going to mean tremendous economic development for the suburbs, and we can talk about that further. I want to thank you again for coming today. I hope to have your vote, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now start with questions. If you have any, please pass them to the rows. I've already collected a few, but I'm going to start with a few of my own. First question, gentlemen. Immigration reform has been on the national agenda for decades with limited meaningful movement through Democratic or Republican-controlled Congresses or presidential administrations. Recent estimates indicate over 12.1 million immigrants are living in the country illegally, approximately 3.8% of the U.S. population. What legislative action do you feel is necessary on the topic of immigration, and what action would you take if elected to make meaningful progress? We'll start with Mr. Krishnamoorthi.
Is it okay to stand now?
Yes.
Thank you for the question. I believe that although we are a nation of laws, we are also a nation of immigrants. And therefore, I believe that we should always treat people with humanity, respect, and the way that we would want to be treated. We need to make sure that our legal immigration processes are strong and that we try to bring as many people as possible legally into the country. For those who are here illegally or who are undocumented, who have staked meaningful roots in this country, who have not committed crimes, and who go to the back of the line and pay back taxes and fines, I believe that they should have a road to citizenship and permanent residency. Certainly for people who are dreamers, those are people who came to this country as young people and who've known no other country as home, we should allow them a way to come here. And finally, under no conditions should we allow parents to be separated from
Thank
children
you.
at the border.
Thank you. Mr. Diganvker.
Thank you. He is already initiating to making us fail. We are all good people in heart. This nation is a nation of law. Yes, we have a lot of immigrants, but legal immigrants. Make no mistake, we must understand this nation is a nation of law, a nation of hardworking Americans. We must respect every hardworking Americans, whether they are immigrant or born American. We must respect everyone. We can't treat them separate. Number two, when they talk about DACA and they talk about immigration reform, they only want to just treat the symptoms of the disease. They don't want to treat the disease. Okay? DACA, if you see the actual number, is maybe 700, 800,000. Actual number we will see. We have more than 20 million undocumented. What they are doing for them? We need a better healthcare, we need a better job, we need a better society for them. And we must work for all.
Excuse me, I'm sorry that we reached our time.
Thank
My
you.
apologies. Next question. While the United States is considered a first world country, our healthcare system ranks 37th by the World Health Organization, with one of the highest levels of spending yet lowest levels of system performance. With the percentage of uninsured Americans rising and the question about long-term viability of the Affordable Care Act and Medicare Medicaid, what legislation would you champion to improve affordable health care for all Americans? And we'll start with Mr. Diganvker.
Thank you. Obamacare is a good care, but it's not the right execution. People are thinking it's a joke. And many people who say they have Obamacare, when they go to any hospital and doctor, and when they found out they are not covered under Obamacare, or the doctor is not covering, or insurance company is covering, it's a joke. We need to fix it. I don't believe in repeal or replace. I believe in fix it. Fix it for the people of hardworking America. We are hardworking people. We need a care. We need a health care that take care of our elderly, existing disease, and also same time we need to open the market. We need to have a healthcare that is affordable, that everyone should afford. We need across the state line, everyone have a right to bargain for their own healthcare where they can afford. So I am in favor of fixing it. I don't believe in replace or repeal, and I am for you. I care for you.
Thank you. Mr. Krishnamoorthi.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. With regard to Medicare, this is a big problem right now. Unfortunately, the government is not allowed to negotiate the price of prescription drugs. And because of that, Medicare Part D expenses are spiraling out of control. I, along with others, have co-sponsored legislation to allow for the government to finally negotiate the price of prescription drugs, which I think will help to lower the cost of drugs for Medicare Part D. With regard to the Affordable Care Act, I, along with my colleagues, have done everything we can on the Democratic side to avoid the repeal of the Affordable Care Act. Rather than repealing the Affordable Care Act, we should fix it. That means stabilizing the insurance markets. But I think we should do even more. For instance, for folks between the ages of 55 and 65, I've co-sponsored legislation to allow them early buy-in to Medicare. I think we should do that and more.
Thank you. The next question from the audience. What do you think about this year's tax legislation and its impact on low and middle-income wage earners? Mr. Krishnamoorthi.
I strongly oppose the GOP tax bill that went through the Congress for 3 reasons. One, it balloons the annual deficits that our country faces. This year we'll be seeing a $1 trillion deficit with a T. Secondly, the benefits of this GOP tax bill accrue mainly to corporations and the top 1% of income owners. 83% of the benefits go to those two groups alone. Third, in this area, many of us take state and local tax deductions that exceed $10,000. However, this GOP tax law caps all deductions at $10,000. What that means is that a lot of people are going to see their taxes rise. That is wrong. That hurts the middle class. Moreover, all the tax cuts are temporary for individuals, but they are permanent for corporations. That's unfair.
Thank you. Mr. Diganvker.
My opponent, Krishnamoorthi's vote no is a nightmare for hardworking Americans. He already voted no for making permanent the individual tax reduction passed in 2017, and he voted no. That means he talks about middle class, but when it comes to go to Congress and vote for them, he don't do that. And I believe in hardworking Americans, and I want to take care of that. Think about this way. They're talking about deficit, 2 million, 3 million, but that is not we are addressing overnight. Our business community, our hardworking family need the support today. They need to bring the food on the table today. This deficit we can fix in 20, 30 years. Why you are crying today? It doesn't make sense. It's not making business sense today. Ask, you are not an entrepreneur. You didn't start any business from the scratch. I did, and I know. I know the pain. I know the pain who go through every day, every hardworking entrepreneurs. I can feel that pain, and I live your pain every day.
Thank you. Next question.
May I have a 30-second rebuttal, please?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Actually, I am a former small business owner who started businesses from scratch, so that's inaccurate, JD. Unfortunately, we are living with deficits and debt as far as the eye can see, and that's going to be loaded on future generations, our children and grandchildren. That's not fair. Moreover, that tax cut that the GOP touts may actually be a tax increase for people in our constituency. Why? Because we can't deduct all those state and local tax deductions the way we could before.
Thank you. Following. Yes, you may.
It's very quick. When he said he is entrepreneur, he started a business, but he did not leave the pain who start the real business, who go back to work every day 5 o'clock in the morning and come back 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock, and they still can't figure out how to get ahead. Many industry, restaurant industry, many industry like a food industry, auto industry. I myself, when I closed my business, drive as an Uber driver. I drove more than 100,000 miles in the last 2 years. I talked to more than 50,000 real people, and I know the pain.
Thank you.
So let's talk real.
Thank you very much. Along the lines of the budget, why has the budget deficit grown so much? Mr. Diganvker.
Well, this deficit grows overnight? No. It's been a long time. Congress have to address this issue. It's not one Congress who can fix it or one representative can fix it. We have to come together in a bipartisan fashion. Right now, the Congress is far right and far left. Nobody is talking in a center. And that is not right. Hardworking Americans suffers because of that. So we need to take care of the business today that supports our hardworking American today. If you think about it, the China situation grow. It doesn't grow overnight. Over 20 years, and that hurt our hardworking companies here in America. We need to bring those business back. We need to bring those jobs back. We need to make our family happy and sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Krishnamoorthi.
I don't think the question was answered. The reason why the deficit has grown this year is because of that GOP tax bill, okay? It's gone up to $1.8 trillion, it's adding $1.8 trillion of debt over time, and that's going to be paid by our children and grandchildren. This year alone, we're going to go up to $1 trillion in the deficit. That's 1 year's worth of debt. That is wrong. And the reason is very simple. The tax rates for corporations was brought from 35% down to 21%. 35 to 21. And the people paying the bill is us. It's us. That is why that's not only unfair, but it adds to the deficit and to long-term debt. We obviously have to do many things to control long-term debt. One is obviously addressed through the revenue situation. Then we have to control spending as well. For instance, with Medicare Part D, we have to control the spending on prescription drugs.
Thank you. Next, this will be your second and final challenge.
How many challenges we have?
2.
Okay. Again, this is a nightmare explanation. When he knows the 2 trillion, 3 trillion deficit we have, our generation will suffer. That's absolutely wrong. First of all, when you start a business overnight, you don't make that business profitable in first year, okay? So it's a stretch. Within 3 to 5, 10 years, this problem will be solved and resolved with right trade policy. And that's what President is doing right now. So look at the President in 2 frames. Mr. President is a constitutionally elected president with respect. The second, let me finish.
I'm sorry, your time is up.
Let me finish.
I'm sorry, we're enforcing the rules.
Can I finish?
Please.
You only get 30 seconds,
Thank
sorry.
you. Next question on education. A strong education system is valuable to our country economically, culturally, and socially. Yet, the U.S. ranks 24th globally in science scores, 38th in math scores, 24th in reading, with students falling behind traditional friends and foes around the world. What are your thoughts on public investment versus privatization of the country's education system? We'll start with Mr. Krishnamoorthi.
Thank you. I'm a product of the Peoria Public Schools. Everything that I have is owed to those teachers and those public schools in Peoria. I believe that we have to safeguard public schools. Why? Because they are the key to the American dream. Not only for immigrants, but everybody. And that is why I've done everything in my power to oppose Betsy DeVos's attempts to basically reduce resources for public education through the Federal Department of Education. I believe that rather than reducing resources, we should be increasing resources. In any case, I oppose the privatization of schools. It only leads to crony capitalism, and we see what's happening in Washington. Secretary DeVos has brought into her highest echelons of leadership precisely the people who would be regulated by the Department of Education. And what has resulted has been a dilution of those precise regulations.
Thank you. Mr. Diganvker.
I support public education. I support our young generation because they are the future of our country. Whatever funding required to support the education system, we must. And not only we must do more because they are the future of America. This is the strongest country in the world and we must protect with our army, with our education, with our infrastructure, everything. Betsy DeVos said, I don't want to go into that discussion. When I will be in Congress, I will support our education system and I will do more. That's all.
Thank you. Employment and compensation data suggests that a majority of working-age individuals will need some level of post-secondary education beyond high school in order to earn a family-sustaining wage and avoid a life of poverty. Yet, student loan debt is nearly $1.5 trillion across 44 million borrowers, many of whom do not have the credentials and/or jobs to help them service their debt in a reasonable time frame. What are your thoughts on the student loan debt issue and what steps should be taken to ensure affordable access to post-secondary education opportunities? We'll start with Mr. Diganvker.
For the post-secondary, I believe a student loan should not be the burden for our college-going kids. My son in UIC, and I know the bills, and that's so painful. If somebody has a 2 or 3 or 4 kids, it's really unbelievable. So I am absolutely in favor of reforming our funding program, and that is not in a position right now. That is not in a place that address the real issue. We have to have a program that supports the family and every family, not just some family, because public education and our basic education with our high school kids and our college. Same time, we have to have a policy that also have a training school, trade schools. We need to encourage more trade schools, and I am for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Krishnamurthy.
Thank you. With regard to the $1.3 trillion in student debt, I think that's absolutely unacceptable. I think we should allow for students to be able to refinance their debt, which is not allowed today. I think we should allow for some loan forgiveness through the public service loan forgiveness program, which is now on the chopping block in Betsy DeVos's Department of Education. Long term, though, we have to open up post-secondary educational opportunities. That's why I'm so proud of my efforts to get signed into law legislation modernizing our skills-based education system. College may not be in everyone's plans, but a quality post-secondary education has to be, and that includes skills-based educational opportunities. My law is going to allow 12 million students across the country get higher quality post-secondary educational opportunities and millions more to access those as well. And businesses will finally close the skills gap.
Thank you. Next question. What is your opinion on the Supreme Court's decision regarding the right to work and unions? We'll start with Mr. Krishnamurthy.
I oppose the right to work. I believe that encourages freeloading by people who get the benefits of collective bargaining without having to pay the dues associated with collective bargaining. I believe that organized labor is very crucial because they stand up for the middle class. They fight for the middle class. They allow for the quality of life that all of us enjoy today. That being said, we have to have management, labor, everyone work together to improve corporations, to improve society as a whole. Long term, I believe the two have to cooperate, for instance, with regard to these post-secondary educational opportunities. Apprenticeships were created by unions. This apprenticeship concept now is spreading across the board, not only from blue-collar work to white-collar work now as well. And that's something that's good because it allows for more people to graduate from high school and get jobs.
Thank you. Mr. Diganvker.
I support our hardworking unions because I don't see union as a union. I see union as a hardworking families, mom and pops, have a commitment for their family plus businesses, and we must support that. And any process, if you talk either way, we have to stand behind their rights and we must support them. Unions doing good job. We need a bigger opportunity for them, bigger infrastructure project for them. I want to answer this question in a different way. It's a very critical, and we must stand behind them. We must not only stand behind, we must stand with them. Either it's a teachers union, my mom was a teacher, she's part of the union. I work for United Airlines. I was part of that, we support that. So let's take care of the union needs and priority in a more common sense way. Instead of bringing the regulations and other new thoughts, let's support the basic.
Thank you. Next question. What is your position on national gun legislation? We'll start with Mr. Diganvker.
I support our Second Amendment. Every American have a rights to protect themselves. But at the same time, we have to have a common sense law that prevent from mentally health individual. We need to take the gun away from them. They need a care. They need a mental health care. We need to address that. When Florida shooting happened, few press started calling me and I could not answer that question because I also had a loss in my family. I lost my two daughters in a house fire. So I understand the pain. I do understand the pain. When that happened, I started going to all the schools, all the police stations, every public places, that how can we prevent this kind of a thing? And everyone's opinion is we need to have a mental health situation needs to take care. And my opponent he wants to bring the 3-day wait period on the gun. It's a joke. It's a lifelong education. If you have a car, if you own a car, you watch every second. Let's take the common sense approach here.
Thank you. Mr. Krishnamoorthi.
I think that we have a Second Amendment, and coming from Peoria, I respect the rights of lawful gun owners to engage in sportsmanship and marksmanship. However, there are too many guns on the streets of this country. We had 33,000 gun deaths just this past year. 2/3 of them were suicides, 1/3 were homicides. I believe that we should pass universal background checks. I've sponsored bills to ban assault-style weapons, to close the gun show loophole, and also to introduce a 3-day waiting period for the purchase of handguns. You have to wait 3 days to get a package from Amazon, but you can get a weapon instantly, and that's not right. This 3-day waiting period has been scientifically shown to reduce gun deaths, and it's a common sense gun measure that most people would support. That's why, fortunately, I've earned the F rating from the NRA, and I'm proud of that.
Thank you. Our next question, I'm going to try to wrap a few together, are related to Medicare and Social Security. What will you do to protect them? How do you make sure that there's sufficient funding for these systems? And is there a way that Medicare can negotiate with pharmaceutical companies? We'll start with Mr. Krishnamoorthi.
Yes. So it's interesting you bring this up because I was handed a constituent letter just before I started this forum asking me to please help her with her Social Security and Medicare expenses. My parents rely on Social Security. They're going to depend on Medicare. This is a personal issue for me. It's my sacred trust to be able to protect these two programs. With regard to Social Security, one of the big problems there is that the cap right now on income is at about $112,500. Unfortunately, income above that is not taxed at all for Social Security purposes. I believe that we should raise the cap, subject to taxation, to be able to have more revenues into the system. With regard to Medicare, I'm glad you brought up that issue of prescription drugs. Again, the reason why the government is not allowed to negotiate the price of prescription drugs are special interests in Washington. We have to, in the next Congress, revise that and allow the government to negotiate.
Thank you. Mr. Diganvker.
This issue is very personal to me. A few months ago, I was relying on Medicare, and this program should be continued, well-funded, and same time. Nobody likes to go on Medicare by choice. People forced into that. I just came today from the funeral. The individual is a young man. He went under stress and he has to suicide, and that's very painful. And I don't want to see this kind of situation in our community or anybody's home. It's a very painful. So we must, including government and the pharmaceutical company, we have to have a solution that fund these programs, and we must continue. And we must support our hardworking family. This is must. I cannot discuss more than that. Thank you.
On the topic of climate change, is it real? What should be done about it? And do you see any hope that the U.S. will rejoin the Paris Climate Treaty? Why or why not? Mr. Diganvker.
Well, I will work in a bipartisan way. Climate change is real. We are experiencing that every second. Why President stepped back on this deal? I don't know. Personally, I don't know. But when I have opportunity to take this issue, yes, I will support the discussion to go back to the treaty again, go back to the climate change treaty, Paris Agreement. And that's very critical. We are not only thinking today, we are thinking about future. We have to rely on science. We have to create more jobs, innovative jobs in this industry. This climate change, we can bring more technology, more job, more development, but we must come together and work together. We just can't work independently. We think collectively, we may work independently, but we still have to come together again and work in the interest of humanity. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Krishnamoorthi.
Well, I'm glad that JD agrees that climate change is real. Unfortunately, our president does not. Climate change is real and it's man-made. Already, the temperature of the globe has gone up 1.8 degrees Fahrenheit, or 1 degree Celsius, since the Industrial Revolution. It may go up another ½ degree by 2040, resulting in potentially irreversible effects to our climate and devastation to our economy. That's why my first bill in Congress was to try to compel the White House to stay in the Paris Climate Change Accord. Unfortunately, I was not successful. I hope to have more friends after November 6th, and maybe we will be successful in the next Congress. The second issue is this. Even at the same time that we are concerned about the president, we should realize there's a real adoption of renewable fuels throughout the country and indeed the world. For instance, with solar, with wind, and other renewables. I believe that this is the way of the future, regardless of what happens with President Trump.
Thank you. Next question. Please address the steps being taken at the federal level to ensure against the ever-increasing cybersecurity threat, including U.S. elections. Mr. Krishnamoorthi.
Very little is being done about this particular issue. We know for a fact that the Russians meddled in our 2016 elections. We know also that the president at different times has called it a hoax. It is not a hoax. The Russians did interfere in our democracy, and we are not taking enough steps to defend ourselves against the threat that's ongoing today with the midterm elections coming up in November. Just the other day, members of the national intelligence community said that we are under attack right now. In fact, Illinois was hacked. 500,000 people within the voter databases of Illinois had their information compromised. Some so much so that Illinois had to allow these people notice of what had happened. I believe that we should increase resources to states and local jurisdictions so that they can protect their election infrastructure. We have to do more. We have to protect our democracy.
Thank you. Mr. Diganvker.
No foreign government should interfere in our internal electoral process. This is a threat, and we must destroy that threat. Absolutely. In that regards, whatever we have to do quick. We cannot stretch this. I support Mueller investigation, but it does not take 5 years. Why they are not moving fast enough? Why they are not doing enough? We have to do not only enough, but we have to do quick enough. And current Congress should react on that. We cannot accept that. And the second thing is cybersecurity. Yes, that's an everyday issue. And every government agency is under attack. Every state government, our secret information, we must protect. We have to increase resources, not only to secure, but nobody should touch our privacy. Nobody should touch our electoral process. We are the most blessed and...
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next question. What can be done to protect women's health care rights, including supporting Planned Parenthood and a woman's right to choose? Mr. Diganvker.
Women's right to choose is women's right. I support women's right. There are certain things that only women can tell. As a legislator, we can just listen to it, we can review it, but I think this issue we have to leave it up to women, and we must support that. Because every body is different, and we must respect that. It's a very personal, and I don't want to discuss more into that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Krishnamoorthi.
I'm happy to discuss it. I think that JD is correct in defending a woman's right to choose. I have a 100% record with Planned Parenthood and organizations on this particular issue, but our president does not. This particular right is under constant attack within Congress because his allies continue to chip away at women's reproductive rights. If women don't have those rights, they cannot be fully equal in the society. I believe that no member of Congress should stand between a woman and her healthcare professional with regard to her body. Period. End of story. And by the way, my wife, who's a physician, reminds me of that every single day. She's an anesthesiologist. The joke is that we both put people to sleep. But here's the deal. We all have to rise up in defense of these rights. We did in 2017 at the women's marches and so forth. We have to continue.
Thank you very much. Next question. Do you support America's involvement in the armed conflicts it's currently involved in? We'll start with Mr. Krishnamoorthi.
I believe that right now we are in a precarious place with regard to foreign policy. We are in a precarious place with regard to the use of force. We in Afghanistan are now in a 17-year war that was predicated on an authorization to use military force that was passed after 9/11. That particular authorization of the use of military force cannot possibly support what's happening today in Afghanistan. I believe Congress should take back the power to determine where we should be engaged in military conflicts. In Iraq, unfortunately, that place too has a situation that should never have happened in the first place, because we chose to go to war in that country on the basis of suspected weapons of mass destruction that never were there. Congress has to take control.
Thank you. Mr. Diganvker.
No war is in the interest of hardworking Americans or worldwide. But we must, as the strongest responsible country on the world, we must take the responsibility, and we have to act proactively. Not only protect our interests, but we have to protect our allies' interests internationally as well. So we must be strong. We have to expand our military base. We have to expand our security base wherever we need to protect our interests. Any current government is not in the interest of war. Look at what happened in China. We are not going to war. We are just handling business there. Look at what happened in Korea. Two Koreans never talked, now they are talking. We are in the interest of the peace, and we are going to pursue that further. We want to make sure our common hardworking American understand one thing, that we must protect our interests at home and across the board, anywhere in the world.
Thank you. Next question. The current political climate has become more partisan and divisive at all levels of government than any time in recent past. Recognizing that compromise is often the most productive way to progress, what issues are you willing to reach across the aisle to find middle ground on? We'll start with Mr. Diganvker.
Thank you. On November 6th, my constituent, when they choose me, I will make sure that I will work with the both parties. Right now, the Congress is most dysfunctional Congress. My opponent says he is working with both parties, but he's not. Look at his voting record. When it comes to taking care of the healthcare, when it comes to tax bill, when it comes to national security, when it comes to immigration, his vote is no. So how can he say he's working on bipartisan? And the vote he voted yes on, that's a common sense vote. That has to happen. And everybody should vote for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Krishnamoorthi.
Unfortunately, my opponent mischaracterizes my record. I have adopted a bipartisan approach in Congress. I'm pleased to say that as your representative, I have passed 14 pieces of legislation that I authored in my office through this House. And 6 of them actually got signed into law by the President, all of which are bipartisan. This is my approach, which is where I disagree with the President and people on the other side, I'm going to have to respectfully disagree. Where I agree with them, I want to work together. That is why I started the Middle Class Jobs Caucus with Republican Congressman Mike Gallagher of Green Bay, Wisconsin, who unfortunately, his only flaw is he's a Packers fan. But apart from that, he's a very good guy. I also started a bipartisan solar caucus with Republican Congressman Ralph Norman. This is the first solar caucus of its kind. We couldn't be more different. He's obviously a conservative from South Carolina, and his name is Ralph.
Thank you. My final question. What sitting elected representative of a political party other than your own do you admire and why? We'll start with Mr. Krishnamoorthi.
Well, I really admired the late Senator John McCain. A great patriot who was attacked mercilessly by the president. He represented all that's great about Congress because where he was passionate in his bipartisanship, nobody could could sway him in the wrong direction. And that is the type of principled leadership that we need on both sides of the aisle, and that's the type of principled leadership I would respectfully like to bring in the next Congress as well.
Thank you. Mr. Diganvker.
Sorry, I didn't have a chance to work with Mr. McCain, but he's our war hero. I do respect that, and not only one, but I will go out of my way to work with everyone to bring the solution in the interest of our hardworking Americans. I do care for you, and I stand behind that. There is nothing politics. Serving is not politics for me. Serving the cause, people's cause, that is my cause. Thank you.
Thank you. Time now requires that we move to closing statements. The candidates will have 1 minute each, and we will start in reverse order from that we began with. Mr. Krishnamoorthi.
Thank you again to the League of Women Voters, the library, and all of you for participating today. I talked about my bipartisan accomplishments, but I am also, in this year, incredibly impressed with the grassroots energy by young people in support of common sense gun measures, by women in support of their rights as well as against sexual assault. I believe that we have to fight for our values while at the same time trying to get something done with the other side where we can. I'm pleased that the Daily Herald, the Chicago Tribune, and the Chicago Sun-Times have all endorsed me. But the most important endorsement I seek is your vote. And that is why I'm here, to respectfully request your vote to give me a contract extension on November 6th. And I promise to make that term as productive, if not more than this one. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Jitendra.
Thank you. Again, it's my honor and privilege to be here in front of you. Thank you for listening us very nicely. And thank you for your great questions. I really appreciate that. In my closing statement, all I want to say is this. In the last 2 years, I drove more than 100,000 miles as an Uber driver. I talked to more than 50,000 people. And those people are from X generation to seniors, okay? Nobody is looking for free food. They need a thrive. They need a respectable life. They need a more job. They need a more opportunity. And we, as an elected official, we have to provide them. Keep the politics aside, we must work together, and we must give them not only hope, but we have to give them the real solution where they can build their own life. Endorsement don't vote, people do. And hardworking Americans understand today.
Thank you very much. As we bring our forum to a close, would you please join me in thanking both of our candidates for their